That money is going directly back into that business, and if we haven't got those mines, then those people aren't going to be in those communities. Not only is there those 800 of direct employees, but then there's around about 2,000 to 3,000. Again, it's a bit of a rubbery number, but these are the people that are engaged then in all the ancillary and service industries that support those 800 jobs. So the operations that are employing them, they use engineering services, they use environmental services, they buy goods in town, and that equates to around about another $250 to $270 million worth of cash that's coming in and out of that local economies and a bit more regional economies. So a very important part. But I think the other key point in terms of when we're talking about people and employees is, again, we're not just talking about numbers, we're actually talking about people that are engaged in those communities as well. So they're not just miners, they're firemen, they're coaches of the local rugby team, they're netball coaches, they're actually actively involved outside of work hours in that community. So if you take those jobs out of that community, those communities then are deficient, they're not as good as what they were before. And that's an important part that gets missed when we start talking about just raw numbers. So what do we mine on the coast? Obviously everyone knows about coal, everyone knows about gold. So let's just talk about coal for a second. I mean, there's really two types of coal that we mine over here. There's energy coal, which is basically the most important ingredient to most of our South Island industrial processes. So no coal, no dairy in the South Island. There is no alternative to coal. It's safe, it's transportable, it's storable, and it's got a good energy value, so you're not carting around a whole bunch of other material that you don't actually need to be able to get to your plant. So when you look at the West Coast again, when we look at, say, dairy, there is no alternative to using coal in those processes. And we don't need an alternative. I mean, we've got 1,000 years of coal supply on the coast to meet the needs of really what is a small part of our overall business, but a really important part because it's earning export dollars. And it's not just dairy, it's horticulture, it's beer making, meat production and production of vegetables. Again, most of the stuff's going for export. The other important use of coal that comes from the coast, and it's well renowned, is coking coal, metallurgical coal, or steel making coal, whichever name you want to call it. The bulk of that comes from the Buller coal field, and also from the Grey. That coal is world renowned, as I've said, and it's world renowned because it's got low impurities in it and it's got really high coking properties. And really the key thing there is that a small amount of New Zealand coal going into these blends, and we export coal to 5 continents and about 12 different customers across Bathurst, Roa Coal, Birchfields. And that coal is being used in each of those blends to mean that they use less of another sort of coal. So for each tonne of steel that's produced by using New Zealand coal, there's less emissions. And that's a fact. That's not something we've made up, and we call it value in use. And it's a big part of our marketing strategy to get these coals into these various locations. And it is the fact of the coal that it's very young coal, because it's been formed in a different tectonic way than what, say, coals out of Australia or Colombia are. And it means that it actually carries a lot of those original properties that people value. And what we're talking about that, I mean steel making, which we're here talking about West Coast jobs today, but we also supply 100% of the coal into the New Zealand Steel plant up in Glenbrook. That supplies 65% of New Zealand's steel needs. So without coal, that plant cannot operate. There is no alternative to making steel out of that plant. There's about 3 billion tonnes of steel made each year, or used each year. Of that, 2 billion tonnes is actually new steel, and bulk of that's created by blast furnaces, and blast furnaces need coking coal to be able to use it. Any economy that we're looking at into the future is going to have steel as part of it, for construction, for rail, for all the things that we use it for now, and for all the things we haven't even thought about using it for. And again, I'll just reiterate the point that West Coast coal added into those blends means there's less emissions per tonne of steel produced. So straight away, by using New Zealand coal, we actually are helping the world emissions levels, and we're helping the world's economies. But it's not all just about coal. Obviously there's a lot of gold mined, there's alluvial gold, there's hard rock gold mine. There's probably not any large scale hard rock at the present time, but there's a couple of projects coming forward. But I think one of the key points is if you look at what Oceana's doing with their Reefton mine, it's world-class rehabilitation. And what it's going to lead to is that site is going to be returned back. It won't be 100% as good as what it was before, but it's going to be usable, and it's going to go back into a form that the natural environment will eventually overtake it. And I think that's a great poster boy for the future developments. There's a lot of development work going on and exploration work going along in that Reefton area looking for underground and open cast gold. And also we've got the Blackwater project, which is trying to get funding to get going into there on an exploration program. So these things, you know, by cleaning up, and which we've proven we can do, the mines of the past, it'll give us the ability to go and mines for the future. I mean, one of the things with alluvial gold mining, I mean, we've got gold plants that were designed and built in Greymouth and other parts on the coast that are used all over the world. And these are more efficient, these plants. And so for every ounce of gold that's recovered, it means that there's less ground that has to be moved to actually get to that amount of gold. So here's an innovation that's come from the coast that's now spread into Alaska and parts of the US and Canada, and is proving to be an environmental improvement right across all those other areas. Another area that doesn't sort of get as much press and is quite often not regarded as mining is aggregates. I mean, everything we do in terms of building, construction, and also resilience, it needs aggregates. So we need concrete, we need cements, and we need all these other products that come from those sort of sources. So some of it comes out of our rivers, and some of it comes out of hard rock, but it's a really important part, and we cannot continue to grow unless we've got access to those aggregates. You know, an important part of that is resilience. I mean, we live and we value the fact that we're in a wild environment. You know, we've got wild rivers. And unfortunately, we've got to armour those rivers and times to protect our towns, to protect our infrastructure, and you know, really to protect ourselves at times. And it's exactly the same with this coast. This coast is not forgiving. We all know that. And so we need these armourings and we need these resources to be able to actually make sure that we can continue to live in the communities that we enjoy. That's why I mentioned Pounamu. And Pounamu really, most of the time, comes from as a byproduct of alluvial gold mining. So the rocks and boulders are found as part of that. If we haven't got access to the land to be able to do the alluvial gold mining, then we're really going to suffer in terms of the amount of Pounamu that can be accessed. And that will then mean a whole other change to the way tourism and that is applied across the coast as well. So just looking at mining on the coast in a little more detail, I mean, what we've seen over the last 10 years, in fact, a lot longer than that even, is that we've got very low impact environmental footprint, both in exploration, in mining, and in rehabilitation. I mean, some good examples for, say, exploration is the use of helicopter-assisted drilling. You know, where we got, traditionally it was drive a track in with a bulldozer, form a pad again with a bulldozer, drill your hole, and then have to cart everything back out again and rehabilitate the site. Quite a large scale for a small footprint. Whereas with heli-assisted drilling, which is widely used in Reefton, the Buller area in particular, really the footprint is about as big as half a netball court. You know, it's tiny to actually get all your work done. Another clear example of sort of mining processes leading towards good rehabilitation is vegetation direct transfer. Now this is a process that was developed originally in alluvial gold mining, where you were picking up basically chunks of ground that included all the trees, flaxes, the mosses, and all the animals that are living in there, and then transporting it directly onto an area that's been preformed to actually take it, and it continues to grow and all the animals and that survive with it. That's then been picked up by coal mining, and it was actually then taken forward and turned into an art form by Birchfields and Solid Energy, and now BT Mining or Bathurst. And it's a really good example where, you know, preservation of the fauna and flora that we're engaging with in mining has actually been preserved as part of the mining process. It's not an afterthought. It's not something we do later because we were forced to by the regional council, by national government. It's miners actually realising that was a more efficient, a better way of doing things. So they've integrated that as part of their everyday work. So I think, you know, one of the sort of messages that I wanted to get across today is that there's a lot of debate going on, particularly around mining. Locally, regionally, nationally, and you know, I think Tony did a really good job of summarising all the various bits of legislation and the various submissions articles that we're being asked to submit on at the present time. But I think one thing that we need to remember is that it's got to be about mining and the environment, not mining or the environment. And you know, I'd just like to reiterate, it's mining and the environment, not mining or the environment. It's not a black and white binary decision. You know, governments, communities around the world and companies are realising this is the way to go, and that the classification of land actually has bugger all to do with what you're going to do on that land. Just because it's stewardship land doesn't make it any different than if it's your own paddock or it's owned by the Crown through some other means. What really matters is what you're doing on it and how you're going to leave it when you're finished with it. You know, the people of the world need mining because it delivers the products that we need and use every day. So no matter what the economy, we're going to have mining. And so why not do it in a way that's environmentally sensible, it's economic, and it feeds back into the local communities that are supporting it. I mean, mining is a short-term land use when it boils down. I mean, most mines, you know, on a small to medium scale last 5 years. Larger scale mines like a Stockton or a Roa, you know, you're looking at a 30, 40 year mine life. I mean, you are eating up your resource as you go forward. So, you know, but the returns are high. There's a lot higher return out of a hectare of land that's sitting in a mine than there is if it's sitting in even forestry. And as we've proven across all of the coast, we can do it in sympathy with the environment. The environment doesn't have to be damaged beyond repair to be able to run a mine, and that mining means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And overall, there's a positive outcome both to economies, to communities, and to the country by continuing to mine. So, look, thanks very much for the opportunity to speak. Thank you.